Welcome, everyone, to the IOA podcast. I am Dr. Malika, and I am your host. And I am super excited to have you here with me in this space where we heal loudly and we live softly. If you are new here, I want you to come in, find a seat, get comfortable. There is room for you at this table. And if you have been walking through this season with me or been on this journey since season one, week after week, I thank you for keeping me company. I do not take it lightly that you keep returning to this one quiet corner of a very, very loud world. Before we begin, we have a little housekeeping because this community keeps growing and I want us to keep building it with intention. So if this show has met you somewhere, I want you to do three quick things. I have three quick asks. First, I would like for you to follow or subscribe, depending on where you are listening to the show, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere else podcasts live. That is where I want you to do that. Following really is the single most powerful thing that you can do. This helps the work reach the people who actually need it. Second, if you are on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review with one honest sentence because reviews help new listeners decide to trust us with their time. And third, I want you to share this episode with someone this week who may have been carrying too much noise in their life and not nearly enough quiet. This may be the thing that gets them on the journey to being able to silence and have stillness in all the things that are going on around them. This is community care in action. Remember that all of our platforms are going to be linked in the show notes and that the Substack companion to this episode is already live and that our paid subscribers have an extended stillness practice waiting for them this week, one that's going to allow them to go deeper than what we can go here in the time that we have together. I'll tell you more about that at the close of the show. And before we close out the opening, I want to say thank you to the listeners and shout out the listeners at WDJY in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. We are super glad to continue to have you here with us on this journey, believing in the work that we are doing here. And I pray that it reaches you in the spaces that you need at the time you need, and it gives you what it is you need to continue to push forward, continue to root, and to continue to grow. And so now that we have gotten all of those housekeeping things out of the way, I really want us to dig into getting to what we're going to talk about for this episode. Episode 35 has been one that has been part of the progression. It's been something that I've approached and talked about in previous episodes, but we really need to get into the depths of this. And I have a feeling that it's going to meet a lot of you exactly where you are. And so, just to frame what we're talking about today, we are talking about stillness in a noisy world. And we're talking about silence, discernment, and spiritual grounding. I want to start with this small confession. I don't know that I have ever lived through probably a louder season than the one we are living in currently. It seems like it's not only the news, it's just like everything around us is loud, it's chaotic, it's out of control. And although the news is certainly loud, we are seeing this constant hum underneath our days in our day-to-day life. The sense that there is always something to check, there's something that you need to answer, there's something to scroll through, there's always something happening somewhere that we are supposed to have a feeling about right now. We are the most connected people who have ever lived. Think about the technology that we have available to us today, which I think is actually interesting because we're more connected, but we're also even more disconnected at the same time because many of us are quietly starving for silence. There's so much noise and we're not getting what it is that we need. So think about the actual shape of an ordinary day in your life. You wake up and before your feet even touches the floor, before you have had a single thought that belongs only to you, you have already reached for your cell phone. And the phone is happy to oblige because there is always something waiting for you. The messages, the emails, the headlines, the notifications, the little red numbers, which I have talked about the fact that I hate those things. And it is not only information anymore. Now When we have a question about anything, we can type it into this machine, this gadget, and get an answer back in seconds. What should I do about my marriage? Type it into your device and get advice. I know people that have done this. I've had clients that have done this where they go to get advice on what to do with their real life that they are living from this gadget. How do I know if I'm depressed? What does this dream mean? Why can't I sleep? We ask a machine, a device, an invention, our most tender, most sacred questions at 2 in the morning, and it will answer us instantly, confidently, or so we believe, and never once tell us that it doesn't know the answer. And I think that that's part of the problem. I want to be careful here because I'm not standing on a hill telling you the technology is evil. It's actually the opposite of that. I'm probably one of the most techie people that you will come across. Technology is something that I believe was created to make us more efficient and to save time so that we have the ability to do more and we have the ability to enjoy our lives. However, because I love good information. So I want to put that disclaimer out there. These tools can be genuinely helpful for someone, but if you are alone and you're by yourself and you're dealing with not connecting to actual human beings, 2 in the morning with a racing mind and this information coming at you, not from an actual voice from another human, is not something that you need. I understand seeking out comfort, wanting to feel connected and more comfortable if possible. But I want us to notice something together today, something that has been quietly happening while we weren't paying attention. We have started to outsource not just our information, but our discernment. We don't trust ourselves, excuse me, enough to go by what our gut is telling us. We're asking an external thing to discern for us what's happening in our life. We have started to feel every silence, every uncertainty, every moment of not knowing so quickly and so completely that we're actually losing the very capacity that silence was meant to grow in us. Because here's the truth, there's a kind of knowing that only comes with stillness. And we have stopped being still long enough to receive it. So, this episode is for the person who cannot remember the last time that they sat in a quiet room or did nothing. It's for the person who feels a little flicker of anxiety when the house is finally empty and it goes silent and reaches for something, a screen, to make that quiet go away. It's for the person who has been asking everyone and everything and every machine and every gadget and every device what to do and has not once asked their own spirit. It is for the person who is so available to the whole world that they have become a stranger to them, to their own self and their own inner voice. If any part of that is you, I want you to settle in. This one is for you. Today, we are going to walk through 4 things. One, what all of this noise is actually doing to the body, because the cost is always going to be physical, not just mental. 2, the difference between information and discernment, and why silence is the ground that discernment grows in. And then 3, what our people have always known about stillness, the inheritance that we come from, because contemplation is not new to us. It's not something that we borrowed from anyone else. And 4, what it looks like to practice with the eye of pause as the daily doorway back to your own knowing. This is not about a digital detox, because we've had an episode that put that out there as a practice that you should consider from time to time. I'm not going to tell you to throw your phone in the lake because you and I both know that you're going to need it to get through the day-to-day of your week. This is about root system work, the slow, quiet work of coming back to the one voice the noise has been drowning out, which is your own. And we are about to get deeper into this episode and begin this work. We are going to take a break. And when we come back, we are going to go a little bit deeper. We will be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone, to the IOA. And we are going to get into the first part of this episode that I think is really important to set the stage for the progress that we hope to make when it comes to this particular journey that we are on today. We are going to start with talking about what the noise costs your body. And the reason why I want to start in the body is because, as I always do, we love to talk about the noise as only being a mental problem and it's a spiritual problem. We'll usually go to those two areas. We don't talk enough about what it does to our body. Your nervous system does not experience the endless streams of input of information that you're taking in as neutral. It experiences it as demand. So every time there's a ping that comes from your device, your body is processing that information. It does not have the ability to process that information as something that does not mean anything. And so I wanted to start here because I feel like our body often gets neglected too often in this journey. We don't give it enough time for us to really sit with it and make sure we are tending to the thing that we are housed in our day to day. And so here's something that's worth sitting with. Your nervous system was built for a rhythm. And, I always talk about rhythm. That's what we are learning about when it comes to this episode. It's not built for a constant influx of anything. Again, it needs a rhythm, exertion, and then it needs rest. It needs sound, then it needs silence, gathering, and then solitude, alertness, and then release. For almost all of our human history, the day has had a shape to it, and the shape usually includes quiet. There was silence of the early morning. So, any of you who work a schedule where you get up very early in the morning and you're out and about, one of the things you notice is there's a silence and a peacefulness out and about when it comes to just the streets and the city that you may be in. It's just very peaceful because there's not a lot of people awake. The silence of walking somewhere on your own 2 feet, that silence of the work done with your hands, all of these things are happening in a moment, and it's necessary for us to have that. Then let's look at the nighttime. There's a silence of the night when it's dark, when it's unlit, and it's still. Your body learned over thousands of years. This is part of the evolution and the epigenetics that our bodies go through to use those pockets of quiet to allow yourself to come down, to digest, to repair, to hear itself think. And then in the space of, let's just say, 15 to 20 years, we have filled in every single one of those pockets of silence with some kind of noise. The algorithm, and I want to name this plainly, has no rhythm at all. It may rhyme with it, but it doesn't have a rhythm. It's not designed to have one. It's designed to be seamless, to never let you land, to make sure that the moment one thing ends, another thing begins, so that you never quite get to that space where you reach the bottom of your own attention. That's not an accident. That's the product working exactly as it was designed to build, to be and designed to work. And your nervous system, which was made for the process of exertion and then rest, is now being asked to run in a state of low, constant, rhythmless alertness all day, every day, with no bottom for you to land on. There's a name for the state so many of us are living in, and it's called continuous partial attention. It is a condition of being perpetually half there. You're monitoring several streams at once. You never fully absorb in any single one. It is answering a text while listening to a podcast, while half watching a show, while thinking about the email you have not sent. And it feels productive. You think you're multitasking. It feels like you're keeping up, but your body is actually paying for it because a nervous system that is always partially braced never quite receives the signal that it is safe to fully rest. There's a deeper cost at work here, and we see it all the time. When you are constantly taking in from the outside, you slowly lose the ability to hear what's happening on the inside. There's a word for that too, that inner listening. It's interoception. It's the body's sense of its own signals, the quiet report of what you feel and need to know. It is the same thing that happens to the caregiver who has deferred her own hunger for so long that she forgets that she's hungry. When the outside is always loud, the inside goes quiet. Not because it has nothing to say, but it has learned that no one is listening. I have worked with people in the past, and it kind of came to me because of the low humming anxiety that they said that they were experiencing with. They could not really explain like what exactly was happening, but they knew something was happening. Nothing necessarily was wrong per se. And as they started talking through it, some things came into focus. They found that they did not have the ability to sit quietly and be silent. They could not be in a space where there wasn't noise or chaos or something happening. And so, because of that, silence actually gave them anxiousness when it's designed to give us the opposite of that. And so, we are finding that not only is the noise replacing the feelings that we need to deal with and process, and also the ability to sit and repair and reflect, we're outrunning that silence every time we turn on a device, every time we are listening to something, every time we are trying to manage all the different things that are happening in our life at one time. And so, I will tell you this, and this is not to diagnose anyone. I think a lot of us are doing a quieter version of the very same thing that I just mentioned. We have become a little afraid of the silence because silence is where the unfelt things kind of come up for us. The unmet grief, the question we have been avoiding, the truth about a relationship or a job or something else in our life that we already know and do not want to have to face. So we keep this noise constantly going, and the noise works for a while, but the body is keeping the record, it's keeping the score. And the things we refuse to feel in the quiet do not disappear. They simply wait and they get louder in other ways. We feel it with our jaws tightening, we feel it with our shallow sleep or sleep insomnia, the sadness that arrives on a random Tuesday for no reason, and we don't have the ability to name what is happening. In the language of my book, Rooted in Resilience, this is a chapter that I call The Rhythm, because healing is not about adding one more thing to your day. It's about restoring the rhythm that your body was built for. That rhythm includes silence, the rhythm that has a bottom you are allowed to land on. Your body is not asking you to do more. Your body is asking you quietly for a little bit of quiet. And so I think that this is a good place for us to take a break. We are going to come back and we're going to get into talking about the misconception about information and how that is not discernment. We will be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone. I am glad that you stayed with us through the break, and I hope that so far the things that you have heard have been beneficial, and it's something that you can use to guide you on this journey. So, for this next segment, I want us to talk about the fact that information is not discernment. Now, I want to name a myth because I feel it runs underneath as a foundation or a current to this whole loud era that we are living in. And most of us have never really questioned it. The myth is that the more you know, that that will bring more clarity. That if we could just read one more article, get one more opinion, ask one more question, run the question through more, more search engines, then finally we would know what to do. And then we look around and we're the most informed generations in human history. And I don't think that we are the most certain. I don't think we are the most discerning. I think we might actually be the least. We have more facts, but we have less discernment. We have more data and less peace, more answers available to us in a split second than any people who have ever lived. And somehow more of us than ever are feeling anxious. We're second guessing ourselves and we're unable to trust our own read that we have on our own lives. And it was one of the conversations I was having with my husband. I was just talking about the fact that being a Gen Xer, that we lived in a time where we had to have this gut feeling and understanding and trust our instincts when it came to certain things, that we had to have the ability to discern what was going on around us. But then we also have this unique capability to be technologically savvy and use technology as a resource to assist us. And that it's a beautiful marriage, but we oftentimes can get caught up in leaning too more on the new technology than we do on ourselves. And so we have to do better with going back to that gut feeling, that spiritual part of us that tells us and discerns what's going on. Because the information and the discernment are actually not the same thing. We've confused them. We think that information is going to help us know and feel what's happening in the situation, and a machine can't do that for you. It can retrieve information, it can summarize it, it can lay out your options, it can tell you what most people in your situation tend to do. That does have its place. I'm not dismissing it, but discernment is that deep, slow knowing of what is true for you in your life, in your particular history, in your spirit. And it's not something that anyone or anything can actually hand to you. It's something that grows in you, with you. All right. And it grows in silence. Here's what troubles me a little. As someone who sits with people in their inner lives for a living, we can now take our most sacred questions, the ones that we had about our grandmothers and our grandfathers who have carried us, to that quiet space, to God, the elders that have been there and given us that long pause to process. We can kind of type them into the machine and into the matrix and get these confident answers. And we think that putting that information in there is a replacement for our discernment. You're dealing with being a caretaker and you're asking the machine to tell you what to do about the mother that raised you, that's been with you your entire life. You're in a situation that you're experiencing in real time and you're asking a machine to tell you, should you leave that situation? Is it something that is not beneficial to you? And yes, the machine's going to give you an answer because that's what it does. It's going to give you an answer. It will never not once say, I don't know. It'll never once say, sit with yourself. It'll never say that that's not the answer to give. And I think that that is part of the catch 22, that if you don't push back and ask questions when it comes to this technology, you will find yourself in a space where you're getting advice from something that doesn't know your life better than you do. So I want to say this gently because I know how tempting it is. And a lot of us come with real questions. We're coming out of real loneliness and we really are just looking for a tool to help us. The tool can help us be more informed. But again, in your information getting, you're ruining your discernment because it cannot be your intuition. It cannot be your relationship with your own spirit. It cannot be a relationship with the forefathers and ancestors that came before you. It can't be your relationship with God. All it can do is hand you information, but it cannot hand you your own sense of knowing. And the danger is not that the machine is evil. The technology is not evil. The technology, again, is a tool. The danger is that we reach for it every single time and every moment that we don't know something. And we never build the muscle the discernment actually is. We never sit in that honest ache of an open question long enough for wisdom actually to arrive. And wisdom, and this is just in my experience, almost always arrives later. It takes time. It's going to come after the silence. It's going to come after the sitting. It comes after we've been quiet long enough to stop performing, even for ourselves, and really sit in what we are experiencing. There's an old phrase, the still small voice is what we are supposed to look for. It talks about Almost every tradition has some version of that, right? The still small voice is probably what we've heard as Black people. The quiet inner knowing, that might be another way that you've heard it talking about it. But what we're basically saying is that this is the part of you that doesn't shout. It's not going to compete with the noise. So if it's in competition with something, it's going to back off or back down. It speaks underneath the surface, but the only time you'll get to hear it is if it's quiet enough for you to hear it. And I believe every one of us has it. I do not think that discernment is a gift that reserved for just a special few group of people. I think it is standard equipment. It's standard issue with us as human beings, but it can easily be drowned out. It will not raise its voice again to be heard over these notifications. It's going to wait for you to come to it. So here is the reframe that I want to offer you today. And I want you to actually take this in. You already know more than you think you do. You are not nearly as lost as the noise has convinced you that you are. Most of the time, the problem is not that you lack information. The problem is that you already know the answer. It's a hard answer to process and to swallow. And the noise has been a very effective way of not having to hear what it's saying. The quiet that you're living in is not empty. That quiet is where your own voice has been waiting for you this entire time. So, in Rooted in Resilience, the chapter that deals with this information is called The Voice. Not the voice of the crowd, not the voice of the algorithm, not the voice of the expert or the machine, your voice, the one underneath, the one that knows. Part of the work of healing is getting quiet enough, often enough, that you can finally tell the difference between the noise and the knowing. And then slowly learning to trust the knowing again, because it has been right more often than we often give it credit for. You simply could not hear it over everything else that was going on in your life. So we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what we inherited in the stillness. We will be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone. And we are going to talk about what we've inherited in that stillness. I think that we did an amazing job with setting the foundation and really talking about better understanding what is happening here when it comes to sitting in stillness and what that does for us. But I don't think that we appreciate enough what we get in that stillness and what we've actually inherited. There's an inheritance here, and I want us to talk about that. Let's widen the lens, and I think that with all of the new wellness trends that we have out here, that a lot of us borrow, things like going to the retreat center and having meditation time and contemplation and silence. So we know that these things are not new. Although they're presented to us as if they're these new ideas, these are things that have always existed. Our people have always known stillness as a sacred ground. In many West African cosmologies and across the spiritual traditions of the African diaspora, silence has not been seen as emptiness. Silence is where you meet God, it's where you meet the divine. It is where you meet the ancestors, those who came before you. It's where your own spirit becomes audible to you. The quiet is not the absence of something, it is the presence of something, a fullness that you can only perceive when you stop making noise long enough to notice it. Our traditions understood this. They understood that the sacred often speaks to us in a register that only silence can pick up. Think about the drum, since rhythm has been with this all this episode. Any drummer will tell you that the rest between the beats is not nothing. My brother, my youngest brother, is a drummer, and he's probably one of my favorite drummers out there. I have several friends that are amazing drummers, and they will tell you that that rest is important. that silence is actually part of the music. Taking out the rest, and you don't have a faster song, you have chaos, you have noise. That pause is what makes the rhythm a rhythm. Our people have always known that. The space between is holy, it's sacred. The breath between the words is where the meaning lives. And look at that. I gave us this space and this break, and it probably is like, okay, she needs to say something. And we see it in our lineages. We don't realize that this is there. Think about the times when you had your grandmother or your grandfather just sitting on the porch first thing in the morning when it's still dark out a little bit as the sun is coming up, and they're drinking their coffee and reading their newspaper. And somehow that nothing was everything. Think about the long pauses that when we would ask a question when we were a child, before they would answer us, that long pause in between was giving us the answer that was worth waiting for. The quiet humming moment in that Black church when it just goes silence right before the shout comes out. And we know what that feels like. That stillness that the praise rises up out of, that if you talk over it, you'll miss that moment. This just lets you know that stillness is not something that we need anyone's permission to practice. It's something that we literally are remembering. But I have to name the other inheritance too. And I think we often want to not acknowledge that this is real. Is that part of why stillness is so hard for so many of us is because we've inherited a culture, particularly here in the United States, that treats stillness as laziness. And so I have talked about this in previous episodes. So definitely go back and look in that when I talked about, in I think the very first episode of this show, when I talked about being rooted and not rushed. We live in a world where it measures a human being's value and worth by their output. That made rest not just unavailable, but dangerous for our forefathers and mothers who were punished for stopping, who could not afford to be caught being still. So when you come from people for whom stillness was risky, your body epigenetically carries a suspicion of rest that you never consciously chose. Sitting quietly can feel like something is wrong, like you're falling behind, like you're about to be caught. And that's not a personal failure, that's our history. So now what we need to do is we need to learn to do something with that history living in this current present day nervous system. So when I ask you to be still, I'm not asking you to do something foreign to who you are. I'm asking you to reclaim or return back to something that was actually taken from us. This was our birthright, right? Return to the birthright that all this noise and this demand for being rushed and producing and hustling has conspired to take away from us. Your stillness is not your laziness. Your stillness is ancestral. It's where the people you come from went to hear God. They went to hear themselves, to remember who they were when the world was working hard to tell them otherwise. In the book, this chapter, and as always, I'm going to get you into the chapter so that you can connect when you purchase the book. It's the book called the chapter called The Garden. And I chose that imagery on purpose because I want you to remember that growth is happening and how beautiful growth is. The most important work in a garden usually happens in that dark, underground, quiet space that you can't see. And the seed is doing the real work in that silence, long before there's anything beautiful above ground to show for it. If you dug it up every time to check to see what was happening, you would kill the work that is happening beneath the soil. It needs to be left alone, in the dark, in the quiet, to become what it is becoming. Your discernment grows like a garden, not like a search result. It does not arrive instantly because you ask for it. It grows underground, in the stillness, in the seasons where nothing seems to be happening. And then one day it breaks to the surface. And you realize you have known the answer for a while. That quiet is not wasted time. The quiet is where you are growing the things that cannot be rushed. So I think that this is a good space for us to take another break. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the practice and Aya pause for this episode. And then we're going to also close the show out. We will be back in just a second. So let's talk about what we need to actually do because on this show, I never want to leave you with a beautiful idea and no way for you to actually live it. And so the foundation, as always, for this show is always going to be leaving you with an eye of pause, which is a trademark concept that I feel like was divinely inspired for me when I was writing the book, as understanding a space where you give silence and it's not a space of nothing, right? It's not a break that you're earning. It's not after your to-do list is done. It's not just being lazy, right? That pause is necessary. It's a breath that you take on purpose in the middle of your life that's trying to take it from you. It's the three breaths and returning to what is true. Or it's meditating on a thought and asking yourself questions and giving yourself silence to be able to answer it. So that aya pause really is a doorway. It's the smallest possible unit of stillness, enough that you cannot tell yourself that you do not have time for it. So it's very small. So that means everyone has time. Here's how you're going to take one. Wherever you are, put your feet flat on the floor, one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, if you have the ability to do that. You're going to breathe in for a count of 4 and out for a count of 6. And make sure you blow it out, letting the exhale run a little bit longer than the inhale, because that is the breath that is going to tell your nervous system that it's safe for you to come down. On the first breath, notice where you are. The second time you do it, notice that the body is doing something. It's starting to notice what's happening. And then the third time around, because I always encourage you to at least do it 3 times, on that third breath, it'll let you know the one true thing that's rising up in you that was actually already there, that was blocked out because you didn't give it the space to speak. That's the aya pause. It can be as simple as 30 seconds, and that's the whole practice. So on top of that aya pause foundation, I want to give you 2 practices for this week. First, daily cleaning. All right. Listen, as Black folks, we are serious about keeping our spaces clean. And I'm not talking about every day cleaning your literal space, because I think that that's a bit much, right? But we are talking about once a day giving yourself one window of real silence. No screen, no podcast, no music, no input. For me, I often like to do it in the car. Although I'm a person that likes to listen to audiobooks and listen to podcasts and music in my car, there will be times where I will get in the car and I won't turn anything on. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to hear anything. Literally, the silence. And I'm noticing just all the different things that are happening around me that I would miss had I not taken the time to be in that silence. So I'm asking you to do this. No screen, no input. Start small, do it for 5 minutes. That's plenty of time to start the practice. If you can get to 10 in the very first go around with this, that's great. The morning time, I think, is probably the best time to do this, before your house wakes up and before everybody gets going with their routine, before you put your phone in your hand. Do this to protect yourself and protect your day. Here's the important part. The clearing is not for accomplishing anything. You're not trying to do anything. You're not trying to meditate correctly. You're not trying to reach some special state. You're simply sitting in the quiet and letting your own inner signal come back online. If it feels uncomfortable at first, that is because your body needed it and it doesn't know how to respond to this. The consistency of the practice will allow you to get better at it. Keep pushing through. Just sit, breathe, be quiet. 5 minutes a day of deliberate, chosen silence will eventually grow for you. The second practice that I want you to get into is discernment. And it's for discernment. And I want to call it the sitting in the not knowing. Now, anybody that knows me personally knows that Malaika likes to know stuff. She does. I don't like being uninformed. I'm a person that likes to not necessarily have answers, but I like to make informed decisions and to move about my life with information. But I even had to practice this. The next time you have a real question, a tender one, a decision that you need to make, the kind that would normally be something that you would type into your phone or your device or send it to friends to get their input, texting them. I want you to do something different. Number one, pause. Take an eye pause if you need to really decompress yourself and settle yourself. Then I want you to sit in and ask these 3 questions. First question, what do I already know here that I've been trying to avoid? Second question is, what am I afraid to hear if I get quiet enough to listen? And then the third question is, what is actually true underneath all of this noise? You don't have to solve anything. You just have to give your own voice the first word before you hand the questions over to the entire world. And I think that these 2 simple things, and I wanted to make them simple, are ways for us to get into this practice. And if you're willing to not know for a little while, it is the soil that knowing actually grows in. You're not being unproductive. You're letting the garden do its best work. So I want to end the show, and I'm hoping that these foundational practices that I gave to you are going to be something that you can put into practice immediately that will be effective. Before I let you go, I want to ask you one question, and I do not want you to answer it quickly. I want you to let it sit. Maybe in your first clearing this week, I want you to do it. What would you know if the noise went quiet? If the answer comes easily, then trust it. It's probably been waiting for a long time for you to ask it that question. If the question makes something tighten in you, it is probably the very idea of a quiet room with no input that feels more like that you are doing the right thing now, then it should not feel like failure. It's simply information. It means that the quiet has something to give you. So when you ask that question and things get tight in the body, you're not doing anything wrong. You're not failing. It's just saying that there's some information here and you need to get it. The quiet is something for you, and you're closer to it just by your bodily reaction than you think. So to everyone that has made it through this episode, just a recap. Remember, 1, the noise has a cost. Your body's keeping that score. Rhythm is important, not constant input. 2, information is not discernment. A machine can give you facts, but it can't discern what's happening in your life. 3, you already know more than you think. The quiet is not empty. It is where your own voice has been waiting. 4, stillness is not laziness. It's inheritance. It's sacred. 5, practice your pause every day. Take a small clearing of real silence and let yourself sit in one open question long enough to hear the answer grow. Remember, you're not in this alone. We are always joined together. Next week on episode 36, we're going to talk about celebration. It's summertime. So we're going to talk about celebration. We're going to talk about learning to celebrate ourselves without waiting for permission, without waiting until we have somehow earned it, without waiting for anyone else to tell us that it's allowed. And so I think that it will make, us feel a little joyful on purpose. And so I'm excited for us to get into that in episode 36. So until then, I want you to breathe slow, take your pause, and let it get quiet enough just once this week to hear the voice that has been waiting for you all along. It's yours, and it always has been. Dr. Malaika, this is the IOA, and I will see you next Tuesday.